He scales a Deathpeak to rescue her, a stranded explorer, forgotten for decades. A sheer wall of obsidian rock reared above the world, battered by winds that screamed over the Andean spine. Rowan clung to the black face, a lean silhouette etched against bruised clouds. His breath came sharp and cold in his chest, each exhale misting as frost bit his cheeks. No ropes, no second chances, just the ancient pact between climber and stone. Every movement was calculated, shaped by years of muscle memory and intuition. He found a sliver for his fingers, shifted his weight, and pressed upward, the world below shrinking with every stretch. The crackle in his earpiece came through like a splinter of static. "Rowan, you've got 15 minutes max," came the voice from his ground team, roughened by altitude and worry. "Blizzard rolling in from the west. You need to top out and get off that face." Rowan grunted, more acknowledgement than reply. He was already somewhere else, his mind moving with the mountain, visualizing the next reach, the hidden shelf, the rhythm of ascent. He trusted the warnings, but the climb consumed him more than any threat from above. His boots scraped over a patch of glassy ice and he paused, mapping out his next leap. Wind howled through his jacket, tugging at him like unseen hands. He spotted a jagged outcrop jutting into the void. With one deep breath, he launched himself across the empty space, fingers searching for purchase. For a heartbeat, he hung suspended, body stretched to its limit. Then his hand caught the edge. Pain flashed in his knuckles, but he ignored it, hauling himself up with a practiced swing. The world beneath him fell away, a dizzying drop into clouds and shifting snow. He climbed the last body length and heaved himself over the rim. The summit was a knife edge, battered by the rising storm. Above, clouds spun in bruised swirls, churning like molten lead. Rowan crouched against the wind, anchoring his rope for the descent, heart steady in his chest. His satellite communicator buzzed, a vibration felt more than heard. He pulled it from his jacket, thumbed it open. The screen flickered, bringing Mara Lynn's face into fractured focus, her dark eyes hard and quick. "Rowan, we've picked up a signal on a restricted frequency." Mara's words were clipped, urgent, but held that underlying note of challenge he knew so well. "There's a rescue operation, alien, far more dangerous than anything you've faced." Rowan's breath caught. Alien? He stared into the wind, his mind spinning with possibilities. Mara nodded. "The Lyrael. Their skin shifts like oil on water, Rowan. One of their own, Zira, was lost decades ago. Mount Nerith, Lyrael homeworld. The most lethal peak they know. Her distress beacon just went live. No Lyrael has ever returned from above the void threshold." She paused, her gaze steady. "They want you to go. Attempt what they believe is impossible." He felt his pulse thunder at the idea. A mountain no human eyes had ever seen, a place drawn in myth and tragedy. "What's the terrain?" he asked, voice low. "Unpredictable geology, wild storms. The locals call it living stone. The void threshold isn't just legend. No one's made it back." Mara's tone softened, almost pleading. "It's a suicide mission, Rowan." He thought of the endless faces he'd climbed, the boundaries he'd pushed, and the ghosts he'd left below. "That's why I have to try," he said quietly, resolve solidifying like ice. Mara's eyes lingered on him, searching for something she wouldn't name. "We'll prep the ship. Coordinates will come through in an hour. Don't disappear on me." He smiled, just barely. "Never do." He pocketed the communicator and stood, letting the wind buffet him one last time. The storm was almost upon him, white claws raking the sky. Rowan checked his anchors, then swung over the edge, rappelling into the teeth of the blizzard. His mind spun with images, alien landscapes, shimmering Lyrael, the mythic peak of Mount Nerith. Every instinct screamed danger, but exhilaration burned brighter. This climb would be more than historic. It would test the very edge of what it meant to be human. Alien transport brought Rowan to Lyrael Prime, the journey so seamless it felt almost unreal. He sat in a cocoon of silver and pale light, the craft utterly silent except for the subtle vibration beneath his boots. Through the crystalline viewport, the planet unfolded in ghostly layers, sky the color of sapphire flame, clouds that shimmered like oil, and then Mount Nerith itself. The mountain erupted from the landscape in a single, impossible spire. Its surface rippled between obsidian and shimmering metal, reflecting the rising sun in fractured halos. The summit vanished into a haze that seemed to breathe. When the ship settled on a wide terrace at the mountain's base, Rowan stepped out into a world unlike any he'd known. The air was sharp and electric, charged with the pulse of alien weather. The base camp sprawled across a crystalline shelf, its structures arching upward as if they'd grown organically from veins of mineral. Walls gleamed with iridescent hues, shifting as he moved. The Lyrael passed around him in silence, tall, graceful beings with skin that shifted in color and pattern, angular faces crowned with delicate filaments that danced in the wind. Yet every eye, whether violet, gold, or storm gray, slid away from the mountain itself. He was met by Captain Silex. She stood a head taller than Rowan, her presence both severe and elegant. Her skin shimmered from deep emerald to cobalt as she regarded him, arms crossed over a metallic sash. "You are Rowan," Silex said, the words precise, carrying an accent that curled around the vowels. Skepticism was clear in her eyes, their violet depths as cold as mountain ice. "You do not look like a climber of legends." Rowan allowed himself a wry smile. "Legends always disappoint in person." Silex's expression barely changed, but Rowan caught the faintest flicker of amusement. She gestured for him to follow, her stride fluid, more like a dancer than a soldier. They walked past low, prismatic domes and bioengineered shelters, the ground underfoot crunching with mineral frost. The Lyrael moved around him, some watching with open curiosity, others turning away. No one spoke of the mountain. Silex led him to the communications array, a lattice of crystalline rods and shifting light that pulsed in tune with a faint, insistent rhythm. "The beacon signal," Silex said. "It reactivated 1 day ago. Faint, but persistent. We have not attempted direct contact." Rowan ran his fingers along the array, feeling the gentle thrum of energy. "Let's try," he said. Silex nodded, inputting a sequence of gestures. Static filled the air, a fractured whisper that grew, sharpened. Then a voice, clear yet ragged with fatigue. "Who is this?" The question hung in the air, edged with suspicion and the exhaustion of long years. Rowan leaned into the array. "Zira? My name is Rowan. I'm here. Well, I'm here to help. I'm a climber. I was asked to reach you." A sharp laugh, more bitter than amused. "A human. They sent a human to die on Nerith?" Zira's words were laced with derision, but beneath it flickered something else. Hope. Or maybe disbelief. Rowan grinned, the challenge igniting a spark in him. "I've climbed worse than this. At least, that's what I tell myself. I promise. I won't make you wait decades for a decent conversation." There was a pause, then a sigh, weary but laced with reluctant amusement. "Your bravado is almost refreshing." "Almost?" Silex stepped forward, her voice more formal. "Zira, this is Captain Silex. We have monitored your signal." Zira cut her off, bitterness sharpening her words. "Now you answer. After so long." "I stopped believing anyone would come. Why now?" Silex's face tightened, the color in her cheeks dulling. "The beacon was lost to interference until recently. We do not abandon our own." A brittle silence. Rowan spoke into it, his tone gentler. Zira, I mean to reach you. Whatever's up there, I'll find a way. Zira's tone softened, almost imperceptibly. The mountain is not what you know, Rowan. Above the void threshold it changes. It's alive in ways you cannot imagine. I'll climb at sunrise, Rowan said, his voice firm. Rest while you can. I'll keep you company as I go. The call faded to silence, but Zira's voice lingered in Rowan's mind long after. He paced the camp, running over every word, every tone. Her fatigue was palpable, yet the spark beneath, the drive to survive, to see something more, struck a chord in him. He remembered isolation on distant peaks, the conversations he'd had with stone and sky, the quiet certainty that somewhere, someone would answer if he called long enough. Now Zira's voice, forged by solitude, haunted him. This was no longer just a mission. It had become personal. Night on Lyral Prime fell with little warning, the stars sharp and close, the air pulsing with a low vibration from the mountain. Rowan lay awake, the silence filled by the memory of Zira's words, by the prospect of what waited above the void threshold. When sleep finally claimed him, it was thin and restless. At dawn, Mount Nerith erupted in metallic fire. The first light ignited the spire, sending waves of color racing across its surface, obsidian shifting to quicksilver, then to a radiant copper that glowed from within. Rowan geared up in silence, the Lyriel watching from a respectful distance. Silex handed him a comm unit, her face unreadable. Report every hour, she said. If you lose contact, we will assume the worst. Rowan nodded, pulling on gloves reinforced with alien mesh. The mountain loomed above, beautiful and terrible, daring him forward. The climb was like nothing he had ever experienced. The stone alternated between glassy smoothness and edges so sharp they drew blood through his gloves. Beneath his hands, the surface pulsed, not with temperature, but with a strange, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, slow and deep. Where he expected fractures or scree, the rock flexed or shifted, forcing him to adapt, to become almost fluid in his movements. He trusted his instincts, letting years of experience merge with the mountain's alien logic. Silex's voice came through the comm, crisp and almost incredulous. Your progress is astonishing, Rowan. You move as if you have climbed here before. He grunted, breathless. Feels like the mountain's teaching me as I go. I just hope I'm a quick study. An hour into the ascent, Zira's voice crackled to life in his ear, wry and alert. Your footwork is imprecise. You favor your left. The ridge will exploit that. Rowan laughed, shifting his weight. You critique like a coach, or a particularly judgmental ghost. Perhaps both, Zira replied. Keep your center low. Nerith rewards respect, not bravado. Her tone softened as the climb grew harder. They spoke of the mountain, its moods, its traps. Zira explained how the temperature could swing from searing to freezing in seconds, how the stone would sing if he pressed his ear to it. Rowan shared stories of Earth's peaks, of dawn over the Andes, of the hush that fell on the world when he reached a summit alone. You climb for peace, Zira observed. I climbed for discovery. In the end, the mountain is always the final teacher. Rowan paused to catch his breath, looking out over a ridge where light fractured into rainbows. You survived up here, Zira. That's more than most could claim. I endured, she corrected quietly. There is a difference. Above the void threshold, endurance may not be enough. Their conversations deepened with every vertical meter. Critique gave way to banter, banter to confession. Zira spoke of her longing for the unknown, the ache of being forgotten, the hope that someday someone would try again. Rowan, in turn, admitted the loneliness he found not on the mountain, but after, when the silence followed him down. As he neared the void threshold, a band of rock that shimmered and buckled beneath him, Zira's voice became urgent. Rowan, listen. Beyond this, the mountain is hostile. Shapes change. The path you see may not be the one you walk. Even the air becomes alive. He hesitated, hand pressed to the living stone. Should I turn back? There was a pause, then a vulnerability he had not heard before. No. You have learned the rhythm. You do not conquer the mountain, Rowan. You become part of its rhythm. Her words struck him with a force he could not explain. Admiration, real and rare, colored her tone, sending a surge of warmth through him. If you reach me, Rowan, Zira said, her voice a whisper full of hope and challenge, I'll show you wonders no human has seen. The promise hung in the thin, electric air, vibrant with possibility, urging Rowan upward toward the unknown. On the fourth day, Rowan entered the realm of the surreal. The world above the void threshold bore no resemblance to the landscape below. Stone flowed and reshaped itself before his eyes, obsidian ridges undulating like muscle, glassy terraces folding and vanishing as he approached, only to reappear elsewhere, inviting and dangerous in the same breath. He moved with deliberate care, each decision steered by Zira's calm voice threading through the static in his earpiece. Wait, she said as he reached a chasm that blinked open like an eye. The stone will close again in a moment. Trust the pulse beneath your feet. He hesitated, feeling the vibration, a slow, tidal rhythm unlike anything human senses were meant to register. The chasm narrowed, the edges knitting together. He crossed in 2 swift strides. How did you know? He asked, his breath visible in the thin electric air. I learned the mountain's moods the hard way, Zira replied. It rewards patience and punishes haste. He smiled, savoring the connection. As the climb grew stranger, their conversations deepened. Sometimes she guided his route. Sometimes they simply talked. Long, winding discussions that moved from climbing philosophy to the pain and hope of solitude. Zira, Rowan asked during a rare moment of calm, how did you end up here? Really? A silence, then, quietly. My isolation was not entirely by chance. There was an arrangement, a union I refused. My family, my entire house, expected compliance. When I fled, it was seen as a disgrace, exile or worse. The ascent was a last act of rebellion. I wanted freedom so much I risked vanishing. Rowan pressed his palm to a ledge, feeling the mountain's thrum echo in his bones. Does your family know you're alive? Zira's voice turned wistful. Soon, they will. My former intended, Commander Veyron, monitors all rescue attempts. He will be tracking your approach. If he arrives before you reach me, you will not be seen as a savior. To him, you'll be a threat. Rowan braced himself against a shifting wall, his jaw set. You're not anyone's possession, Zira, not his, not your house's. I don't care who he is. She warned him, low and urgent. Veyron is relentless. He will not tolerate interference, especially not from a human. Rowan's answer was immediate, fierce. I won't abandon you, whatever it takes. You're not alone. A long pause, then Zira's voice, unsteady but sincere. My reasons for wanting to leave have changed. I'm not just running from loneliness anymore. The words hung between them, electric. Rowan's focus sharpened, no longer just on the climb. He was drawn to her, inexplicably and powerfully. We'll face whatever comes, he promised, together. The mountain, sensing urgency, began to test him. Paths twisted under his hands, ledges dissolved into mist. Yet each time, Zira's insights guided him, her intuition meshing with his instincts, until their movements seemed choreographed, one mind split across distance. As he rounded a spire of liquid bright stone, the wreck of Zira's vessel appeared. It was embedded in the mountainside, gleaming metal twisted with living rock, as if the mountain itself had cradled it in memory. The hull shimmered with alien glyphs, half swallowed by crystal growths. Rowan paused, awe and dread mingling. He opened the channel. "I see it, Zira. Your ship. Are you inside?" "Not far," she answered, voice taut with longing and fear. "But there's little time. Veyron's ships are closing in. The sensors on my wreck, what's left of them, register his approach." Rowan scanned the sky. Faint glimmers flickered above the horizon, unnatural against the swirling clouds. "He's really coming," Rowan muttered, "the embodiment of everything you escaped." Zira's tone was brittle, but resolute. "He will try to reclaim what he believes is his." Rowan pressed further, his own doubts surfacing. "Zira, is this real? Or is it just desperation for both of us?" Her answer was unwavering. "It is real, Rowan. I would not risk everything for a lie, not again." The tension in the air was palpable, charged with hope and fear. Rowan's gloved hand hovered over the fractured hull. "When I reach you, everything changes." "It already has," she said, voice trembling with conviction. "You brought light into years of darkness." They fell into banter, nerves edged with longing. "You're nothing like I imagined a human would be," Zira teased, watching his approach through the remaining cameras. Rowan grinned, risking a glance at the shifting sky. "Is that good or bad?" A pause, then a soft laugh. "Very good. Unpredictable. Genuine. I never thought I'd envy Earth's luck." He pressed onward, heart pounding. The path twisted, the mountain testing every inch of resolve, but Zira's words kept him moving. "Veyron's ships have entered the upper atmosphere," she reported, urgency mounting. "We must act before he lands. If he finds you with me—" Rowan's voice was low, determined. "Then we fight. I didn't come this far to give up now." She drew a breath, and he could feel her hesitation through the crackling comms. "You know, there was a time I would have accepted my fate, married Veyron, lived in gilded captivity. But not now. Not after you." He slipped through a tight crevice, fingers tracing alien glyphs. "I've spent my life running towards something I couldn't name. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was you." The mountain vibrated with a new intensity. Lightning rippled through the sky, Veyron's ships, burning through cloud layers, casting angular shadows over the living stone. The sense of time accelerated. Rowan's breath came fast, driven by adrenaline and anticipation. "Zira, tell me where you are, exactly." "Lower deck, near the breach in the hull. Hurry, Rowan." "The mountain senses the storm. The stone is becoming hostile." He launched himself forward, ducking beneath a curtain of crystal. The hull's entrance loomed ahead, warped but passable. Inside, lights flickered along the corridor, casting rainbow reflections on the walls. Zira's voice guided him, steadier now, as if hope lent her strength. "Almost there," she said, her accent thickening with emotion. "Every moment, I feared this would be a dream I'd wake from. But you made it real." Rowan pressed his hand to the inner door, feeling warmth radiate from the other side. "I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." She laughed, pure, breathless. "You're reckless, Rowan, and stubborn. I like that." Sirens blared through the wreck, warning of the incoming ships. Shadows passed over the viewports, harsh and purposeful. Zira's voice sharpened. "He's landing. Veyron is almost here." Rowan squared his shoulders. "Let him come. I'd face 1,000 storms for you." She answered softly. "We'll face them together." Their voices overlapped as the moment sharpened, their hope and longing fusing in the electric air. Time compressed to a razor edge, danger on the outside. But inside, the promise of something new. Urgency pulsed between them, bright as lightning. They had only moments before Veyron arrived, but those moments were theirs, charged with possibility, hope, and the unspoken certainty that their lives had already changed forever. Rowan's final push was a battle not just with gravity, but with the mountain itself. Above the fractured hull, handholds dissolved as he reached for them. Surfaces rippled and twisted, living stone shifting to deny him purchase. He climbed anyway, reading the tremors under his skin, trusting the memory of Zira's voice and the rhythm they'd built together. The world shrank to each desperate movement, the cut of glassy edges against his palms, the cold burn of air so thin it seared his lungs. When at last he reached Zira's ship, the battered hull glowed with shifting prismatic light. The hatch was half buried in stone that pulsed beneath his touch, then yielded with a sigh, as if remembering him. Rowan slipped inside, heart hammering, boots echoing against alien metal. The corridor glimmered, shadows and color sliding over fractured surfaces. He paused, breath catching. Zira stood at the end of the passage, framed in the ship's strange radiance. Her iridescent skin shimmered in waves of blue, violet, and rose, each motion catching light from the battered consoles around her. Her eyes were enormous and luminous, violet with a depth that seemed endless. Sharp, striking features, cheekbones high, jaw strong, marked her as both beautiful and utterly other. For a moment, neither moved, caught in the impossible reality of being face to face. The air between them vibrated with everything they'd said, and all the things they hadn't. Zira was the first to find her voice, barely a whisper. "Thank you for risking everything to find me." Rowan let out a breath that shook. "Thank you for being worth the risk." A tremor passed through Zira's hands, but she stepped forward, her fingers rising to trace the line of his jaw. Her touch was feather-light, curious and reverent. The connection was immediate, an electric shock of recognition and longing. Rowan's own hand rose to cup hers, their palms meeting. In the shimmer of the ship's wounded light, distance collapsed. He leaned in, as if compelled by the gravity of her presence. Their lips met, a first kiss, intense, impulsive, full of everything they'd risked and lost to reach this moment. Zira tasted of mountain air and starlight, her skin cool and smooth beneath his hands. The world outside faded, pain and fear falling away. Zira broke the kiss first, breathless, her forehead pressed to his. "That was unwise," she murmured, voice trembling with laughter and warning. "Absolutely," Rowan agreed, lips brushing hers again, neither willing to pull away. They moved together, hands exploring, bodies drawn by a force stronger than any promise or threat. For a few heartbeats, time itself seemed to pause. Then the alarms shattered the quiet. Sirens blared throughout the ship, painting the walls in frantic red and blue. Veyron's ships were landing. Rowan could feel the shudder of engines vibrating through the hull. Zira tore herself away, her eyes wild with urgency but her resolve unbroken. "He's here." Veyron's landing parties are at the base of the wreck. "Rowan, the ship can't fly. The engines fused to the stone years ago." Rowan glanced around, searching for options. "We can't stay here. Is there another way out?" She nodded, already moving. "Up. There's an emergency hatch to the outer hull. If we can reach the summit, we'll have a chance. The signal beacon there can cut through Veyron's jamming. Someone, anyone, might hear." She dragged open a storage panel, pulling out hybrid climbing gear, a wild tangle of iridescent carapace, carbon mesh, and living tendrils that flexed in her hands. Rowan took the harness, fingers brushing hers. They locked eyes, an unspoken vow passing between them as they moved in perfect sync, fitting buckles, tightening straps, checking the line. The corridor bucked as impact struck the ship's lower decks. Zira's voice remained steady. "Once we're outside, Follow my lead. The mountain is angrier than ever, but I know its moods. We'll move fast. They climbed through the hatch, emerging into blistering wind and the fever-bright light of the summit slopes. Above, the sky was torn by the streaks of descending ships, Veyron's forces, fanning out in glinting lines of silver and black. At their backs, the mountain loomed, alive, shifting, treacherous. A booming, amplified voice echoed over the spire, cold and commanding. Zira, this is Commander Veyron. Surrender yourself and your companion. There is nowhere left to run. Do not make this worse for yourself. Zira's face tightened, but she ignored the demand, focusing on the terrain. Rowan fell into step beside her, matching her movements. The slope was a razor's edge, glass and stone folding beneath their boots, crevasses opening and closing in time to the mountain's living pulse. He risked a sideways glance, unable to suppress a crooked grin. You look incredible when you climb, you know. Zira shot him an exasperated look, breath misting in the freezing air. Now is hardly the moment for flattery, Rowan. He laughed, the sound reckless and alive. It's the perfect moment. Who knows if we'll get another? Their laughter was cut short by the crack of energy blasts behind them. Veyron's troops had forced the outer hatch, sending arcs of light splintering through the ship's hull. The mountain answered with a deep, seismic growl, stone shifting beneath Rowan's feet. Zira grabbed his wrist, pulling him up the slope. They climbed, dodging falling rock and the searchlights that swept overhead. The mountain fought them, but together their skills blended. Her knowledge of every shift and hazard, his instinct for improvisation, the way his body moved in harmony with hers. At one point, a fissure opened beneath Rowan's boots. Zira caught him, anchoring the rope as he swung over a dizzying void. He looked up, their faces inches apart, adrenaline thrumming. I trust you, he said, voice rough. She grinned, fierce and beautiful. Don't let go. They pressed on, the summit drawing nearer, danger closing behind. Rowan reached for a ledge, Zira beside him, her hand finding his, fingers locking tight. In that suspended moment, with the mountain raging below and Veyron's men closing above, they kissed again. Desperate and certain, clinging to the only thing in the universe that made sense. Energy blasts split the air. The world narrowed to the two of them, balanced over death, hearts beating in sync, climbing not just for survival, but for the hope that, together, they could forge something new atop a mountain that had never been conquered. Trusting only in each other, Rowan and Zira ascended, the future uncertain, but the bond between them unbreakable as living stone. The summit neared, and the mountain unleashed its final defenses. Stone twisted under Rowan's boots, reshaping with every desperate step. Razor-edged crystals erupted in his path, shifting like living blades, while the air thinned until every breath seared his lungs. At his side, Zira moved with fierce determination, her knowledge of the terrain blending with Rowan's relentless drive. Together, they anticipated the mountain's every trap, reacting in unison, her hand guiding him around sudden fissures, his strength steadying her when the wind threatened to tear them away. They paused in the shelter of a crystalline overhang, the world below lost in swirling mist and silver light. Rowan pressed his forehead to Zira's, heart pounding with more than exertion. Their faces glistened with cold and sweat, breath mingling in the frigid air. Zira's voice was soft, almost lost to the wind. In 30 years alone, I never imagined rescue would come in the form of someone I could love. Rowan grinned through exhaustion, his eyes shining with warmth. Good thing I make a habit of the impossible. Her laughter shimmered, dispelling years of loneliness in a single sound. For a heartbeat, the world belonged to them alone. The last 100 meters tested every limit. The mountain fought them with illusions. Paths appeared and vanished. Stone shifted beneath their fingers, the air itself humming with warning. Yet nothing could break their focus, their partnership now as unshakable as the stone itself. Side by side, they pushed upward, each drawing courage from the other. Then, suddenly, there was nowhere left to climb. They emerged atop the summit, a plateau of flowing crystal, refracting light into rivers of color. Above them, the sky was an alien tapestry, stars unfamiliar and bright, constellations Rowan had never dreamed. The wind had died, leaving only the sound of their breath and the faint pulse of the living mountain beneath their feet. Rowan gazed in awe. We made it. Zira's eyes filled with wonder, and something deeper, a peace that had eluded her for decades. I had forgotten how beautiful this world could be. But the moment was shattered by a deep, resonant roar. Veyron's flagship dropped through the clouds, massive and bristling with weapons, its engines stirring the crystal into a trembling sea. Landing struts deployed with seismic finality, and the ramp descended. Veyron strode forth, tall and severe, his armor gleaming, his eyes cold. He barely acknowledged Rowan, his gaze was fixed on Zira, heavy with expectation and command. Zira, he called, his voice amplified across the summit. You will return with me. This farce has gone on long enough. You have duties. To your house, to your people, to me. Zira's stance was regal, chin lifted, every line of her body radiating resolve. I choose freedom. You choose control. She reached for Rowan's hand, fingers entwining with his, a silent declaration. Veyron's mouth tightened. You dishonor your lineage. This human has nothing to offer but empty promises. Come now, before I lose patience. Rowan stepped forward, refusing to be dismissed. She's not your possession. She decides her own fate. I'm just here to stand beside her. Something you've never understood. Veyron's eyes flashed with fury. In a single fluid motion, he drew a weapon, sleek, deadly, glowing with lethal energy. You know nothing of our ways, human. Interference will not be tolerated. He leveled the weapon at Rowan, but before he could fire, the mountain itself responded. Crystalline stone surged up in a wall of light and color, shielding Rowan and Zira, deflecting Veyron's attack. The blast ricocheted harmlessly into the sky, scattering sparks against the living barrier. Zira stood tall, voice clear and strong. The mountain protects those who respect it. You command nothing here. Veyron stared in disbelief, forced to lower his weapon as the mountain's power made his threat meaningless. He looked from Zira to Rowan and back, realization dawning. His authority was broken, not just by Zira's defiance, but by the land itself. You would abandon your house, Veyron said quietly, bitterness seeping into his tone. For him? Zira's gaze was unwavering. For myself. For freedom. Rowan offers what you never could. A choice. Veyron's shoulders slumped, the weight of inevitability settling upon him. Around them, his fleet hovered, uncertain, awaiting orders that would never come. After a long, tense silence, Veyron bowed his head. If this is your true will, Zira, I will abide by it. The mountain has spoken. He turned, every line of his body stiff with defeat, and signaled his troops. Withdraw. The flagship's engines thundered, lifting the ship back into the star-bright sky. One by one, the vessels vanished, their shadows swept away by the wind. Silence returned, profound and echoing, as if the mountain itself exhaled in relief. Zira let out a shaky breath, then turned to Rowan, her eyes luminous with emotion. She stepped into his embrace, pressing her face against his neck, arms tightening around him as if to anchor herself in this new reality. He held her close, the cold forgotten. What now? She whispered, voice trembling between hope and disbelief. Rowan smiled, brushing a strand of iridescent hair from her cheek. Now we descend. Then we decide what comes next. Together. For the first time, Zira smiled without hesitation. The mountain, at peace, seemed to glow around them, blessing their union. The summit was no longer a place of exile, but the beginning of something new. Hard-won, impossible, and entirely theirs. The descent was both terrifying and exhilarating. The razor-edged ridge where Rowan and Zira had made their stand against Veyron now seemed to welcome their passage. Crystal and obsidian, once shifting and hostile, yielded beneath their boots as if the mountain itself recognized the new bond forged at its summit. Each step downward was a testament to trust. Zira's hand steady in Rowan's, their movements synchronized after so many harrowing trials. With every meter, the frantic pulse of adrenaline ebbed, replaced by a quiet intimacy that grew in the hush between heartbeats. The mountain's fierce winds softened to a gentle sigh, and the living stone, so long a threat, pulsed instead with the promise of a future neither had dared imagine. They paused at a sheltered ledge, above the swirling mists and far from the reach of old expectations. Rowan slung his pack down, stretching aching muscles as the alien sky glimmered overhead. Zira settled beside him, her iridescent skin shifting with the play of light, her expression soft and contemplative. "It feels different now," she said, glancing at the crystal underfoot. "I spent years fighting this mountain, certain it wanted me dead. But today it feels almost gentle." Rowan grinned, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. "Maybe it was waiting for the right person to climb with. You changed it as much as it changed you." She laughed, the sound bright and unburdened. "Is that the human way? Make peace with the impossible?" He shrugged, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Or die trying." They sat in silence, hands twined together, breathing in the thin, electric air. As they resumed their descent, conversation came easily, wounds and weariness giving way to hope. Rowan told her stories of Earth's wildest places, the wind-carved faces of Patagonia, the ice-lit peaks of the Himalayas, the feeling of dawn breaking over an endless sea of stone. "I want to see them all," Zira said, a note of wonder in her voice. "To stand on a mountain and not feel alone." Rowan squeezed her hand. "We'll climb them together. And when we've had our fill of Earth, we'll find peaks on your worlds, maybe even in other galaxies." Zira's laughter was like sunlight. "A life of partnership, freedom. Is that really possible?" "It's the only future I want," Rowan replied. "No more forced choices, only the ones we make together." As they drew closer to base camp, the mountain's hostility faded completely. The living stone smoothed into wide terraces and sparkling veins, as if blessing their passage. The air grew warmer, the sky brightening with the colors of a lyreal dawn. They moved with confidence and grace, every obstacle behind them. At last, the crystalline sprawl of camp appeared below. Figures gathered at the edge, watching in stunned silence as Rowan and Zira made their final approach. Captain Silex was at the forefront, her angular features softened by awe and relief. "You survived," Silex breathed as they reached the camp, eyes wide with something like reverence. "You did more than survive. You conquered Nerith, and returned with its lost soul." Zira inclined her head, her gaze steady and proud. "I was never lost. Just waiting for someone willing to climb." Silex looked from Zira to Rowan, a rare smile touching her lips. "The impossible has been achieved, not just the summit, but this." She gestured to the space between them, where human and Lyrael stood side by side. "A bond between worlds." The camp erupted into hushed celebration. The Lyrael, who had once turned away from the mountain, now pressed forward, their eyes bright with questions and hope. Word of Veyron's defeat, of the mountain's defense of Zira and Rowan, spread quickly. Leaders arrived, shaken and uncertain, the old certainties of tradition and duty undermined by the living testimony before them. Some whispered, uneasy. Others looked at Rowan and Zira with new respect, their rigid customs crumbling in the face of change. Silex approached once more, offering sanctuary. You are welcome here, both of you. The council will see to your protection. If you choose to stay, you will have a place among us. Rowan glanced at Zira, finding her eyes already on his, luminous with anticipation and longing. The answer was clear to them both. Thank you, Rowan said quietly, but we've spent too long in captivity, each in our own way. It's time to see the world together. Zira nodded. We choose freedom. The arrangements were swift. Silex herself saw them to the crystalline landing pad, where a sleek vessel awaited, bathed in the light of a new dawn. Their bags packed with little more than supplies and hope, Rowan and Zira stood side by side, ready for a future neither could have predicted. As they ascended the ramp, Rowan squeezed Zira's hand, nerves and excitement mixing in his chest. The engines hummed, the hatch sealing behind them as the world outside faded to anticipation. He turned, unable to keep the smile from his face. Ready for a new world? Zira's eyes sparkled, the color of distant stars. She leaned in, arms sliding around his waist, voice a whisper against his skin. With you, I'm already home. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Their vessel lifted, leaving Lyriel Prime behind, a world forever changed by their courage and the impossible love born on its highest peak. Their story became legend, echoing across two worlds. Some spoke of the human who conquered an impossible mountain, others of the Lyriel woman who risked everything for her own freedom. But all remembered the truth, a love born in danger, tempered by adversity, strong enough to unite what had once seemed forever divided. And as their ship vanished into the unknown, Rowan and Zira's journey, and their love, was only just beginning. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.